Imagine making $420 million per week. You've got private jets, exotic zoos, and mansions in every corner of the country. Now, try to imagine that you're so rich that rats eat around $2 billion of your cash in a year and you don't even notice. Welcome to the financial fever dream that was Pablo Escobar's life, a man who became one of the richest people in human history by selling white powder dreams. But this isn't just a tale of drugs and danger. This is a masterclass in underground economics, monopolies, supply chains, and what happens when capitalism goes completely off the rails. Strap in, because this is the story of how Pablo Escobar built a $70 billion empire and what every entrepreneur, investor, and finance nerd can learn from the kingpin who made money move mountains literally. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born in 1949 in Rio Negro, Colombia. The son of a poor farmer and a school teacher, he wasn't born with a silver spoon, more like a plastic one with dreams of turning it into gold. He was a hustler from day one, selling fake diplomas, stealing gravestones, and reselling them later on. Yes, literally selling gravestones. Pablo didn't just think outside the box. He sold the box, forged a certificate for it, and then taxed you for carrying it home. Think of young Pablo as the Elon Musk of petty crime, except instead of launching rockets, he was launching scams. In the 1970s, Pablo Escobar recognized a burgeoning opportunity, the rising demand for cocaine in the US. While others saw a dangerous narcotic, Escobar saw a lucrative commodity. He didn't just enter the drug trade, he revolutionized it, establishing a vertically integrated operation that controlled every facet, from production to distribution. The economic engine of cocaine was, of course, production costs, transportation, market price, and profit margins. Then there was the revenue and wealth accumulation, where its revenue is estimated to have been approximately $22 billion annually in the 1980s. Oh boy, I'm in the wrong business. And this adjusts for around $65 billion today when accounting for inflation. At his peak, Escobar's net worth was estimated to be around $30 billion in the 1990s, which is over $70 billion in today's money. Escobar, of course, had many smuggling innovations under his name. There was the aircraft utilization, where he purchased 13 Boeing 727s, each capable of transporting 11 tons of cocaine to facilitate the smuggling operations. There were also submarine deployment. The cartel employed submarines to discreetly transport cocaine, showcasing their commitment to innovative smuggling techniques. Pablo Escobar's ascent wasn't merely about drug trafficking, it was a masterclass in supply chain management, logistics, and financial acumen. By controlling every aspect of the operation and continuously innovating, he transformed the cocaine trade into a global enterprise, amassing a fortune that rivaled even the world's wealthiest individuals. Pablo Escobar wasn't just a criminal, he was a financial strategist who transformed the illicit drug trade into a global enterprise. Let's try and dissect the economic mechanisms that powered the Medellin Cartel. First of all, let's start with vertical integration. By controlling the supply chain, Escobar's operation was vertically integrated. This meant that he controlled every stage of the product's journey. Cultivation. The cocoa plants were grown in Colombia's remote regions, benefiting from low labor costs. Then, of course, we get to processing. The cocoa leaves were processed into cocaine in clandestine laboratories. The cost to produce 1 kilogram of cocaine in the 1980s was approximately $1,000 to $4,000, which adjusts to today's money to $2,800 and $11,200 plus or minus. Transportation. Smuggling routes included planes, boats, and even submarines, like we mentioned. Pilots were reportedly paid up to $500,000 per flight to smuggle cocaine into the US, which is equivalent to $1.4 million in today's money. Once in the US, the cocaine was distributed through a network of dealers with street prices reaching from $50,000 to $70,000 per kilogram in the 1980s, or around $140,000 to $200,000 today. With production and transportation costs totaling around $4,000 per kilogram and a US street value of $60,000, the profit margin per kilogram was approximately 1,400%. At the height of its operations, the Medellin Cartel smuggled up to 15 tons of cocaine into the US, generating $70 million daily in the 1980s, which is equivalent to $200 million today. Then, of course, we cannot talk about him without talking about money laundering. Handling such vast sums of cash posed a significant challenge. Escobar employed several methods to launder money. First of all, there were the Smurfs. Those were the low-level operatives who made numerous small bank deposits to avoid detection. $1,000 here, $900 there, etc., just to avoid getting caught by the banking system. We get then to the shell companies. These were investments in legitimate businesses such as real estate and retail, which helped integrate illicit funds into the legal economy. Then, of course, there was the black market peso exchange. This system involved exchanging US dollars for Colombian pesos at discounted rates, facilitating the repatriation of drugs without physical cash movement. Like in every business, there are the operational expenditures. That's basically the cost of doing business. Managing the cartel's finances wasn't without expenses. The Medellin Cartel spent around $2,500 per month only on rubber bands to hold all the cash in bundles. Another problem was the cash storage. Escobar reportedly lost $2.1 billion annually, which is about 10% of the stored cash, due to spoilage, including from water and rats. Then there were the bribes that had to be paid, with Escobar paying approximately $350 million to Panamanian leader Manuel Noriega to safeguard his funds in the banks in Panama. He also needed security. Maintaining a private army and sophisticated security measures was essential to protect the operation. Escobar's financial acumen turned the Medellin Cartel into a formidable economic force. By controlling the entire supply chain, maximizing profit margins, and employing innovative money laundering techniques, he built an empire that rivaled multinational corporations. Now, if money is power, Pablo Escobar wasn't just powerful, he was basically a god in his own country. But instead of Wall Street suits and Silicon Valley conference rooms, Escobar's boardroom was an opulent jungle paradise, filled with animals, private jets, and piles of uncounted cash. While most billionaires would splurge on yachts and real estate portfolios, Escobar turned excess into an art form, and his business expenses tell a story of absurdity that would make even the Wolf of Wall Street blush. Hacienda Napoles was more like a private nation than a home. With a size of over 7.7 square miles, which is approximately 3,000 hectares, this made it larger than Monaco. The cost at the time was estimated to be around 63 million US dollars. That's around $150 million in today's money. The features included a private airport runway for his fleet of planes, of course, a bullfighting arena like you do, life-size dinosaur statues, a private zoo with exotic animals which included giraffes, elephants and flamingos, and the now infamous Colombian hippos who still roam the area. Pablo, what a man you were. You could say he was the original narco-tourism pioneer, long before Airbnb made unique getaways trendy. Of course, Escobar didn't fly commercial, he flew everything. We already touched on the 13 Boeing 727s, which is the same type used by the airlines, but he also had dozens of smaller aircrafts used for smuggling, helicopters for quick escapes, and private pilots on retainers. So, just a quick breakdown of the expenses he paid. The rubber bands to bundle the cash around $2,500 per month. Bribes and protection about 1 to 2 million per month. Cash spoilage from rats and mildew and water up to 2 billion. And security guards, weapons surveillance system, that was around 10 million per month. Pablo Escobar didn't just build an empire with bullets and powder, he built it by weaving himself into the very fabric of Colombia's political machine. He didn't just bend the rules, he bought the rule book, buried the referees, and rewrote the entire game. This was Escobar's most brilliant and most terrifying innovation. Politics wasn't an obstacle, it was a business expense. That's how he saw it. Plata o plomo literally means silver or lead. Translation, you take the bribe or you take the bullet. This phrase defined Escobar's entire approach to negotiation with the police, judges, politicians, customs officials, and even journalists. According to DEA estimates, Escobar spent over $500 million per year just on bribes alone. Adjusted for inflation, that's around $1.6 billion in today's money. Fun fact, at some point Escobar had over 1,000 Colombian police officers on his payroll. In 1982, Pablo Escobar bought a seat in Colombia's Congress, not through votes but through influence. He joined the Chamber of Representatives, gaining diplomatic immunity and a legitimate face for his narco fortune. He even at some point offered to pay Colombia's $10 billion national debt in exchange for protection from extradition to the United States. But this facade didn't last. Interior Minister Rodrigo Lara Bonilla exposed Escobar's criminal ties and was subsequently assassinated in 1984. This crime was widely attributed to Escobar's orders. The murder turned public opinion sharply against Escobar and marked the end of his short-lived political career. He resigned, but the war had just begun. When he was rejected by the political elite, Escobar didn't just take it lying down, he took it to the streets. Bombings of government buildings, banks, shopping centers, and even a commercial airliner killed over 100 people. Judges and journalists were murdered with total impunity. He even put a $1,000 bounty on every police officer's head, triggering one of the deadliest periods in Colombian history. In 1989, Escobar made Forbes magazine once again, not just for his wealth, but as public enemy number one in both Colombia and the United States. When faced with possible extradition to the US, Escobar cut a deal. He would surrender himself, but only if he could build his own prison. You heard that right, Escobar built his own prison, La Catedral. This was built to his own specifications, which included a bar, a jacuzzi, a waterfall, a soccer field, and even a disco. That's what you do if you have too much money. His sentence: total luxury and continued cartel operation from behind designer bars. After it became public knowledge that Pablo Escobar was still running the Medellin Cartel from inside, the government tried to move him. Escobar walked out before they arrived and vanished into the hills. Pablo Escobar's political reach wasn't just violent, it was systemic. Over 75% of Colombia's legislative and law enforcement bodies were influenced in some way or another or compromised by cartel money by the late 1980s. Entire municipalities in Antioquia functioned under his payroll. In some regions, he essentially replaced state with cartel governance. In the world of business, we talk about vertical integration and strategic partnerships. Escobar's version involved assassins, bribes, and ballots. His genius wasn't just building a drug empire, it was in creating a parallel narco state within Colombia. His strategy wasn't democracy, it was narcocracy. By the early 1990s, Pablo Escobar's empire was crumbling. The combined forces of the Colombian government, rival cartels, and international pressure were closing in. Escobar's reign, once seemingly unassailable, was nearing its end. The Colombian government, with support from the United States, formed the Search Bloc. This was a special unit dedicated to capturing Escobar. Simultaneously, a vigilante group known as Los Pepes, those were people persecuted by Pablo Escobar, emerged, consisting of rival cartel members and former associates seeking retribution. Escobar's communication habits finally became his Achilles heel. A 22-minute phone call to his son was intercepted, allowing authorities to triangulate his location. On December 2, 1993, Escobar was located in a middle-class neighborhood in Medellin. As police closed in, a firefight ensued. Escobar attempted to escape via the rooftops but was fatally shot. Now, the official account states that he was shot by the Search Bloc, but other theories still abound. Some people believe that he was killed by Los Pepes, while others suggest that he basically took his own life to avoid capture. Escobar's death marked the end of the Medellin Cartel's dominance. However, the power vacuum led to the rise of the Cali Cartel and continued violence. In Medellin, over 25,000 people attended his funeral, reflecting the complex legacy of a man who was both a benefactor and a criminal. For many people in Medellin's poorest neighborhoods, Pablo Escobar was not just a distant cartel boss, but a visible presence who spent money where the state largely did not. He financed housing projects, most famously the neighborhood that came to be known as Barrio Pablo Escobar, and he paid for soccer fields, roads, and small community improvements. He also handed out cash directly to families in need. He funded local events and supported youth sports, which helped him cultivate an image as a kind of outlaw patron, if you will. To people living in extreme poverty, these gestures were immediate and tangible, and they created a sense of loyalty that translated into real public support. This is why when he died, many attended his funeral, not because they were unaware of his crimes, but because their personal experiences with him were complicated. To some, he embodied resistance to an unequal system and filled gaps left by a weak and absent government. That contradiction, being both a ruthless criminal and a perceived benefactor, lies at the heart of Escobar's legacy, and it helps explain why his story continues to fascinate, disturb, and divide opinions even decades later. Despite his death, Escobar's story didn't end. Rumors of hidden treasures and secret stashes have persisted, captivating treasure hunters and authorities alike. Escobar was known to hide vast sums of money in various locations, walls, underground bunkers, and remote fields. In 2020, his nephew claims to have found $18 million hidden in a wall in one of Escobar's houses. The Colombian government has uncovered around $100 million worth of these stashed treasures, including gold bullion, barrels of cash, and jewels. However, it is believed that over $1.3 billion remains hidden, with only Escobar and his closest associates knowing the exact locations. The allure of Escobar's hidden fortune has inspired numerous expeditions and even a television series. Advanced technologies like ground-penetrating radar are employed in hopes of locating these elusive caches. So what can we learn from Escobar's life? First off, the price of power and wealth. Pablo Escobar's story is one of extremes, a billionaire built on brutality, ingenuity, and excess. But beyond the headlines and legends, his life offers us valuable lessons in finance, economics, and human nature. The power of vertical integration and why ethics matter. Escobar mastered vertical integration, controlling everything from cocoa fields to retail distribution. In the legal business world, this means tighter quality control, increased margins, and competitive advantage. Controlling your supply chain can maximize profit, but sustainability and ethics are crucial. Without them, power built on exploitation will eventually crumble. Secondly, cash is king, but managing cash is a kingdom totally on its own. At its peak, Escobar's cartel generated an estimated $420 million per week, which is over $1 billion today. That's a literal mountain of cash coming along with its own problems. The cartel spent millions on rubber bands just to hold the money together. They lost billions to spoilage such as rats and water damage. They faced the massive challenge of laundering billions without modern fintech tools. In finance, liquidity management and operational costs are just as important as revenue. Even massive income can be wasted without smart systems. Another lesson to be learned from Escobar is that of corruption and power, when business turns to bribery and violence. Escobar's plata o plomo strategy was an extreme form of corruption economics. You buy or you die. He spent over $500 million annually on bribes alone. His influence corrupted entire government sectors. Shortened gains from unethical shortcuts create long-term instability. A business that ignores ethics risks losing everything. Wealth without legacy is a house of cards. Despite his riches, Escobar's empire collapsed within a decade and his fortune is scattered or lost. His philanthropy was overshadowed by violence and his name remains controversial. True legacy comes not just from wealth, but from positive impact and sustainable growth. Wealth without values is fragile. To this day, Escobar's hidden fortunes fuel legends and treasure hunts, reminding us that not all wealth is liquid or accessible. Over $1 billion in cash, gold and valuables is still believed to be hidden. The risk of invisible assets and liabilities is totally real, whether in crime or in corporate finance. Transparency and accountability in managing assets are key. Hidden risks can undermine any enterprise. Escobar's story is more than dollars and dollars lost to rats. It's a reminder that behind every financial empire are lives, communities, and societies which are all affected. As aspiring entrepreneurs, investors, or leaders, it's vital to balance ambition with integrity, power with responsibility. Power without accountability is a recipe for ruin. Thanks so much for joining this deep dive into one of the most infamous financial empires ever built and destroyed. What part of Escobar's story surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more opening financial tales.